I made a video reviewing about a dozen underrated Roblox games, and I also teased an eventual sequel for it. So I read through a lot of comments, gathered a list of 10 games for me to review, and in this video I will be answering the question, are underrated Roblox games actually worth playing? I will review and rank these games based on their gameplay, visual style, my personal enjoyment playing them, and to spice things up, how well they fit in their respective genres. I'll also give them a video game soundtrack that best represents their vibe. Make sure to subscribe, and let's start off with... Pizza Game is a roguelike first-person shooter with an enjoyable gameplay loop and a wide variety of weapons and upgrades. The visuals of this game consist of a unique combination of 3D and pixel art graphics, which remind me of something like Pixel Gun 3D. You guys remember that? It is a retro boomer shooter with a pretty good amount of content to offer, despite being, quote, very unfinished. This statement does hold a bit of truth because as a new player, the game can be confusing. You open the map for the first time and you're like, what is this? But it can be pretty fun once you understand the gist of it. The game relies on the mechanic that you have souls, a currency you can use to buy better upgrades at the shop, but if you lose all of your HP and still have a soul lying around, you will lose the soul instead of dying. It gets even more strategic because you're forced to sacrifice your souls in exchange for a power-up at the end of each level, but if you decide not to give any, your maximum HP will be reduced. It is really well thought out. The risk and reward factors are what make a roguelike great, and this game manages to create a perfect balance between them, forcing you to make various choices that will noticeably change the gameplay. And there isn't a tutorial for absolutely anything. You just learn this game by playing it, which is the fun part, when you get to learn what each little thing does and you watch as your character slowly progresses from having nothing to having a lot of random stuff on your screen. And the visual style really helps give the game its flavor. I really like when Roblox games decide to blend pixel art in their visuals because it's something fairly unconventional that adds a lot of charm to the game, and honestly, if you remove the Roblox logo in the top left, would you be able to tell this was made in Roblox? Now, despite the name, this is not a sequel to Work at a Pizza Place. In fact, there is a distinct lack of pizzas in this game, but you're taught very early on that you must use the blood of your enemies as tomato sauce. People somehow try and compare this game to Ultra Kill for some reason, but like, come on, not every pixelated gory first-person shooter is Ultra Kill. This one kinda is. I had a lot of fun with both games, but I must say, Pizza Game is a little unfriendly towards beginners, mainly because you don't have many movement options to work with at the beginning of the game, so you just have to rely on moving out of the way of enemy attacks. And when there's a lot of them, you can't really do much. And the bosses suffer the most from this issue, mainly because they're already difficult on their own, but they also just don't make sense. The boss fights are really the only complaint I have about this game, because when they're as small as the player, you can barely even see what they're going to do. But I gotta give it to the developers. This game is excellent so far. And also, one of the devs is in my Discord server, which is funny. You should totally join, by the way. Link is in the description. Pizza Game is a little too difficult for its own good, but the gameplay loop and massive variety of content offer an extremely fun game to play, and it's weird not to see it getting the recognition I thought it would. Gameplay 8 out of 10, visuals 8.5 out of 10, enjoyment 8 out of 10. As a roguelike and even as a shooter, this gets a nice 8 out of 10. I recommend playing Pizza Game, and the perfect song that goes with this game is Peppermint Strikes from Pizza Tower. You know, same name. Pilgrammed is an open-world RPG that stands out by not taking itself too seriously. You explore a vast land that houses many different locations to explore and enemies to fight, which is really cool. The game has a certain charm to it, despite it having very rough visuals. But like every Roblox RPG game, there has to be a combat system. Pilgrim's combat sucks, and it is truly the worst offender that makes this game unenjoyable. Yeah, okay, skill issue, whatever, but oh man, I got a lot of recommendations for me to play this game, so my hopes were maybe a bit higher than they should have been, and this game just fails to deliver. You can tell a certain amount of effort has been poured into this game, but one of the main reasons I signed up for it, the combat, is fairly underwhelming and a little annoying to get the hang of. And Pilgrimmed is also a wiki game. What does that mean, you ask? It means that if you have a problem, you have to look up your solution online or else you may never solve it. Yay! But alright, let me get into the actual criticism. What annoys me about the combat system is that it's choppy. Blocking doesn't instantly apply right after using your weapon, and parrying as a mechanic is weird because it doesn't really stun the enemy, it just saves you from getting hit once. But in reality, you can completely ignore most of this and just kite them as if you're fighting an enemy and don't starve. This is alright because it works with a lack of combat mechanics. This is not, because there are a multitude of combat mechanics, but you don't really get to use them the way the developers intended. And yeah, this is a Roblox RPG, so this game is bound to get real grindy real fast. The reason I dislike this game genre on Roblox is because 90% of them, despite trying to make themselves stand out and be original, manage to fall right into the same category and stereotypes as all the others. It is a genre that has been milked to death on Roblox, and unfortunately, Pilgrimmed doesn't have much to bring to the table either. Yes, there may be a few gags here and there that got a laugh out of me, some really cool features that make the game a bit easier to play, a straightforward progression system, and music that is honestly way more memorable than I expected it to be, but as a game, this isn't really worth playing, especially because of the unforgiving early game. I understand why you could be into this game, it has some potential, and it is satisfying to see your character progress and evolve with every little upgrade you collect. It is an interesting game genre that, if done right, can cause severe addiction, but Pilgrim needs to fix its fundamental issues before it can become a genuinely fun game. There is a foundation here for a good game, but it's ruined by mostly the gameplay itself. The game isn't necessarily bad. As I mentioned earlier, I think it's very charming and is a somewhat unique experience on paper, but I'm probably not playing it again because of the janky nature of it that really grinds my gears. Gameplay 5 out of 10, visuals 3 out of 10, enjoyment 4 out of 10. Pilgrimmed gets a 5 out of 10 as an RPG game. I do not recommend playing it, although once again, you might enjoy it. The song I chose for Pilgrimmed is Green Path from Hollow Knight. Detriment is a 3D story platformer set in the world of 2016 Roblox, back when wearing a fire shirt was actually fire. It's currently a demo and it presents a pretty simple moveset with a very unpredictable air dash. You wake up one day to see that all of your Bloxy Cola is missing, so obviously you go on the biggest adventure ever just to get a drink. The current tech demo of Detriment is really good. The gameplay is enjoyable, the game itself has a lot of personality and love put into it, and you can talk with every NPC. Every living being that you see you can interact with. Now that's some dedication. The overall vibe and charm of Detriment make me feel like I'm playing a modern reincarnation of the great Yolk Tales, which was just one of the best Roblox games of its time. And Detriment really manages to give that memorable vibe. Despite it being shorter than 2 hours, I can already feel the mark it's gonna have over the indie Roblox scene, and after I was done with it, I wanted more. I don't have much to say about it because it's so short, and honestly, it's an excellent game so far. The level design can get a bit confusing at times because in some levels you have the freedom to jump on literally anything, but honestly, it's this freedom that makes the game so charming and so full of life. Each level is so well fleshed out, and you even get rewarded if you interact with the NPCs because some of them might tell you where where a secret can be found. And the gameplay itself is fairly unique. Despite the limited moveset, most of the levels in Detriment have a special feel about them, and every level presents something different, whether it be fighting a boss or getting run over by a train. There's always something new to do, and it never gets repetitive. Now, the main moveset of Detriment consists of a double jump and an air dash. The reason I called it the main moveset is because there are multiple different abilities that give you different movesets, and each one has its own quirks. Personally, I prefer the default abilities, and you can tell most of the game was built around those, but it's fun to have different playstyles that you can experiment with. The story of Detriment seems very interesting, and you know you've done something right as a developer if people make lore videos out of 2 hours of content. I genuinely don't have much to say about this game since it's so short and goes by in a flash, but I also think that everyone should experience this game blind at one point or another. Gameplay 8.5 out of 10, visuals 8 out of 10, enjoyment 9.5 out of 10. As a 3D platformer, this gets that nice crisp 8 out of 10. I think the foundation this demo has is really good. I recommend playing Detriment, even though I'd recommend putting it off until it's fully released. I got a good soundtrack for this one. I got this from Hi-Fi Rush. Rooms and Doors is a horror game inspired by rooms, but not doors, although it is a remake of the game Rooms that inspired doors. Basically, you open doors and enter rooms. Okay, I'll stop. This game has me in a weird situation because it is not something I'd recommend to the general public, but it is a game that I think is worth trying out. As I mentioned, it is a remake from the ground up of Nico Rox's Rooms, a horror game where you walk through a randomly generated office building and sometimes might get attacked. Ooh, guys, look, it's A60! This game kind of sucks. We all know that, but in Rooms and Doors, there's more variety in the gameplay. Some of the monsters even beating the screaming PNG allegations by being fully 3D models. You can even use modifiers or equip certain charms that change up the gameplay in various ways, providing different playstyles and a lot of replayability. If I caught your interest by now, I just need to warn you of one small problem. The gameplay. Now, the gameplay of Rooms and Doors is fairly conventional, relying mainly on the hide when a bad guy comes horror game trope, which can make the game feel really uninteresting despite how many entities are thrown at you, because to solve any problem you just enter a locker. But it is also difficult, and it's not like the first few times playing it you'll die kind of difficult. It is annoyingly difficult. It's basically as if someone made a rage game scary. This game does not hold back. The more you advance in Rooms and Doors, the more unforgiving it becomes, introducing a lot of dangers and making you juggle between them constantly. And the monsters themselves don't really synergize either, making for some really chaotic interactions every now and then. And this design choice can be unappealing to a lot of people, but unfortunately, I am not a lot of people. I somewhat enjoyed playing Rooms and Doors. Even though most of the game sucks big balls, I still got hooked. It is far from a masterpiece or anything, but it is a challenge. And I've made 3 videos on rage games already. I love challenges. The game has a few good things going for it. I think the charm system is unique and I hope they expand upon it further. And I do have to appreciate that you get a checkpoint every 100 rooms, because otherwise this game would have had like 5 people playing it. But my only real complaint is that sometimes the game can feel heavily RNG dependent. You can either get lucky and have the easiest run in your life, or get a run where 5 different entities attack you back to back, all because of gambling. Pair this with some really repetitive gameplay and honestly it just feels like rolling the dice for a good run. But the concept itself is pretty interesting, so I have fairly high expectations for this game to become more balanced and actually worth playing. Oh my god, I said it. Rooms and Doors is definitely not everybody's cup of tea, but it brings a unique and challenging spin to an otherwise mostly mediocre genre. Gameplay 7 out of 10, visuals 6 out of 10, enjoyment 8 out of 10. As a standalone Roblox horror experience, this gets an 8 out of 10 due to its tense atmosphere paired with its unrelenting nature. I hesitantly recommend trying Rooms and Doors out. A song that goes with this game is Last Breath from Ultimate Custom Night. Abyss World is a 3D platformer rage game heavily inspired by Jump King, with the exact same mechanic of having a very unpredictable jump that has no visible charge meter for it. You explore an open map where you must descend further and further into the abyss, doing really difficult jumps and timing them just right to hop from place to place. But compared to Jump King, this game does have an animation when charging your jump, but look at this! What is that? Why do I just quickly stand up for half a second before getting back down? That's strike number 1, but it gets worse. If the game already wasn't hard and annoying enough, they introduced the silly concept of fall damage, which on paper works for this game, but it's also really unforgiving as a mechanic, which, you know, the point of a rage game is to be unforgiving, and I do have over 40 hours on Jump King, so this shouldn't be a problem, but this is just something ridiculous for the sake of being ridiculous, because you take fall damage for the smallest of jumps. That's strike 2. Despite the visuals being pretty decent, the level design is not. Rage games are mainly linear. You can't really stray far away from the main path, but this game somehow also gets that wrong by giving you an extremely open area to explore. You can even find secrets and items, and there's an entire crafting system. Bitch, I'm not trying to play an open world RPG. What the fuck is this? The level design kinda makes sense at times, but the further you descend, the more convoluted it becomes. On some levels, you just find yourself walking around randomly hoping that you find the correct path. That's strike number 3, because who hops on a game like this with a desire to go exploring? All you have are these balloons that show you where to go, but it's still sometimes hard to figure out. And then, if you thought it couldn't get worse, they introduced fucking enemies. Like, this was not necessary whatsoever, and they're also just a burden to deal with at times. I expected a rage game platformer, but instead I got a rage game platformer that also doubles as a shitty Roblox RPG, and it doesn't do either of these genres right. To put it bluntly, Abyss World is tolerable, but obviously that isn't a good label to have if it's the only label you have. The developers clearly know how to make good visuals, but the gameplay is janky, and it's weird to have such freedom to go anywhere in a rage game. Now, did I play it for a little longer than I should have and got to checkpoint 13? Yes. Would I go back and play it again? No. Abyss World is a double-edged sword that presents some fairly interesting gameplay concepts, but also just misses the mark entirely on making itself cohesive. Gameplay 3 out of 10, visuals 7 out of 10, enjoyment 5 out of 10. As a rage game, Abyss World gets a 4 out of 10 because it is annoying for all the wrong reasons. I do not recommend Abyss World if you want to keep your sanity intact. The soundtrack that goes with this game is 4 Brave Champions from Castle Crashers. Decaying Winter. Oh boy. If you've watched my other underrated games video, you'd know that I gave Decaying Winter a pretty bad rating, leading to basically over half of the comments being about Decaying Winter and me sucking. And you know what? I'll be 100% honest with you. I wrote this review with 25 minutes of playtime. I definitely understand why you'd be angry. Anyway, this time I decided to give Decaying Winter another chance, a real opportunity for it to prove itself. So I played it some more. Decaying Winter is fun. One might even say it's actually worth playing. I now kind of understand why so many people like this game, because once you get the hang of how everything works, it's extremely satisfying. The only big problem is getting the hang of how everything works. Decaying Winter is a wave-based, team-based survival shooter where your goal is to survive hordes of enemies that get progressively harder to fight back against. You're given a certain amount of time to roam the map and scavenge for weapons and resources before being forced to head back and fight a new wave of enemies. Despite the map staying the same, the loot is completely different each day, and the plethora of perks and traits add a lot of diversity as you can mix and match your abilities to make whatever playstyle you desire. Now, I want to ask you a simple question. Do you think Roblox games are just too easy? If your answer is yes, I have a simple solution for you. Play Decaying Winter. This game will not hesitate to do a little trolling. This game is is unforgiving on a different level. To be able to succeed in it, you must have 4 other completely cooperative individuals by your side, which if you're playing with randoms is like winning the lottery. Now, I have a lot of actual criticism for this game. For example, this game is not easy to pick up as a beginner. Obviously, you were basically told nothing, and whilst I do appreciate the trial and error concept for Decaying Winter, it could benefit from at least pointing you in the right direction about stuff that seems unclear. What it all really boils down to is the fact that Decaying Winter is unintuitive. Not every game makes your character have fractured arms or legs that restrict you from aiming with a gun or walking faster. Not every game has 7 different healing items that each fix a different problem you might have, which is what makes Decaying Winter interesting. This does make learning the game, however, very annoying, but once you do get the hang of it, it gets pretty addicting. The gameplay loop is a bit too simple on paper, but once you throw in all the variety that I mentioned earlier, it can make for a pretty fun experience. Now, as a team-based game, for some reason, this game does not have any quick communication keybind. Despite there being so many keys, there isn't one for asking your teammates for different items, which in my opinion is necessary for team-based games, especially if you're playing with randoms. I also think the combat is a little unpredictable at times, but that can also be mastered with enough hours of playtime. But otherwise, Decaying Winter is a pretty cool game. I understand why it has such a loving and dedicated community behind it. It is a pretty unique concept for a game on Roblox and presents a challenge unlike anything I've seen on the platform before. Gameplay 8 out of 10, visuals 7.5 out of 10, enjoyment 8 out of 10. I don't even know what genre this falls into, but I'm giving Decaying Winter an 8.5 out of 10 as a survival shooter. I recommend playing Decaying Winter if you have someone who can teach you how to play it. Last time it was Night Soil, this time I choose the song River of Despair from The Binding of Isaac Repentance. Stars Align is a 3D platformer with a lot of charm and also heavily inspired by stuff like Super Mario Odyssey. It just gives me that vibe. At the time of this video, it's only a demo, and fully completing all the levels, including the secret one, takes about 3 hours in total, which really isn't a lot, and forgive me if this review is shorter, but what the demo currently has to offer can only really be summed up in one word: promising. The art style of this game is extremely polished and unique. It manages to do so much with so little. There's not some AAA extremely detailed visuals, it just has sleek and eye-catching colors, and the lighting makes it feel like you're not even playing Roblox. The game is overall really charming with some fairly memorable character designs. One of my favorites probably has to be the Hold-A-Bell, which is a ghost that just holds a bell for no reason. This game really does stand out in a multitude of ways, but it doesn't in its gameplay. It has the Super Mario 64 moveset, but without the ground pound, which is honestly a real bummer. Not only that, but the stages the demo offers lack a lot of variety, not in design, but in the way they play. I can't even count how many parts there are where you have to go in the opposite direction of some rotating platforms. The platforming is bleak, and they don't really try taking it to its fullest potential. It presents generic 3D platformer stuff like moving spikes or moving platforms with the occasional power-up that adds just a little bit of spice, but not enough. It is safe to say that the presentation of this game does most of the heavy lifting because the gameplay does not feel as polished as the visuals, which is a shame because this game is basically an all-style, no-substance kind of game, and you really don't expect that to be the case upon first glance. I did enjoy the new Halloween level that introduces these pink and green blocks that change whenever you jump. It was a pretty good level, but it didn't feel too extraordinary. This game has a lot of potential. I want the developers to learn from their mistakes, and I hope to see the finished product of Stars Align in the future. Gameplay 6 out of 10, visuals 9 out of 10, enjoyment 9 out of 10, and as a 3D platformer, I give it a 6 out of 10 because it could use some work. I recommend playing Stars Align, and the perfect song that goes with it is Star Festival from Super Mario Galaxy. Randomly Generated Droids is a roguelike that heavily focuses on Roblox's sword fighting mechanics. You go through procedurally generated worlds and fight various droids, each with their own abilities. Now, some of you might have gotten hit with whiplash after hearing the words Roblox sword fighting, and yeah, they made a game with it. And no, it isn't that good. Okay, the game is good, but it's a little too fundamentally simple and unbalanced for it to be currently worth playing. You see, Roblox sword fighting is, how do I put it? It's bad. So having an entire game with fleshed out enemies and items and weapons that relies on just clicking the mouse button and nothing else kinda sucks because it's basically wasted potential. There are also other weapons like magic items and guns, but it's still just based on the default Roblox combat. Now, randomly generated droids takes me back, mainly because of the stupid sword fighting, but also because of the way it looks. It has that bare bones feel that Roblox games used to have back in 2015 when I used to log on to the platform every day and play a game just like this one. The plain UI, the straightforward gameplay and visual design all just help to make this game feel nostalgic despite being made in 2020. But it doesn't hold up to today's standards. It made me realize that just like Roblox, I've changed as well, and my demands as I've grown older have become more complex. I don't feel the thrill of playing a game like randomly generated droids anymore. I'd rather stick to something like The Binding of Isaac. There are a lot of flaws with this game, and I would have overlooked them when I was younger, but now they stick out like a sore thumb. The hallways on each floor are too narrow, some of the enemies are too annoying, the game is too basic, too plain for me to enjoy to its fullest. There's a lot of weapon diversity, there are a shit ton of classes to pick and choose from, there are several different worlds, each with their own theming, and I see the vision of this game, but the developers limiting themselves on purpose by making it feel like something I would have played over half a decade ago. The concepts are there, but not fully fleshed out as the game's description says they are. People will just eat up anything, no matter how bad it is, if it labels itself as a passion project. I don't know how that got there. And I don't want you guys to think that I dislike RGD because it feels old. But to be fair, old things suck most of the time. But genuinely, look at this. Does this look fun to you?
Ooh, my neurons are firing at a rapid rate.
Yip yippity yap. Game is kind of bad. Gameplay, 4 out of 10. Visuals, 2 out of 10. Enjoyment, 5 out of 10. And as a roguelike, this gets a 5 out of 10. I do not recommend randomly generated droids. The song that goes with this game is Cyber Battle from Deltarune. Blocktails has also appeared in my first video, but it's received a bunch of updates since then, and I now have a much larger sample size to work with. And one of the developers is in my Discord for some reason. Thank you for that though. If you're somehow out of the loop, Blocktails is a turn-based RPG inspired by the likes of Earthbound with its visual aesthetic and writing, and Paper Mario 64 due to the fixed camera and combat elements, as well as some 2D aspects here and there. Well, it's only been like 6 months. How the fuck did they cook this much in the meantime? They've managed to add 2 new chapters, and boy, aren't they something. We all know chapter 1 is iconic, chapter 2 is and chapter 3 is the best. Now, Blocktails is what I like to call a Roblox miracle, because rarely do we see a linear story game on a platform where games with infinite replayability are the norm. So, how is Blocktails now? It's still really fucking good. I played through chapters 2 and 3 live on stream, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out, and I had a really good time with them. The gameplay is great, although some enemies were kind of stupid, but the overall charm this game has is unlike any other on Roblox. And if I catch any comments saying that Blocktails is not underrated, I will explode. Anyway. What?
6
separate soundtracks already have over 1 million views? Fuck. The story of Blocktails is very ambiguous, and the length of each chapter, despite them being about 3 hours long, feels a bit too short for something memorable to happen because you're caught up in some random quests and what feels like the game occasionally stalling for time. Most of this criticism doesn't really apply to chapter 3, however, since we get a lot of major lore, and holy shit, they got the goat to make pixel art for it, but the game still feels like there's just one missing piece that I can't put my finger on, but since it's a demo, I'll let it slide. But I'm watching you closely. Otherwise, Block Tales is perfection. It is fun, it is charming, it is captivating, and it's what the Roblox platform needs. Despite my light criticism, I do have this lingering feeling that the game is building up and making us wait for something grand to unfold, and I can't wait to see it happen. This has easily become one of the most anticipated Roblox games of all time, at least for me. Gameplay 9.5 out of 10, visuals 10 out of 10, enjoyment 10 out of 10, and as an RPG game, this gets a 9 out of 10. Do I even need to say it? I recommend playing Block Tales. And the song I chose for Block Tales is The Heart of the Desert from Omori. I'm gonna make this one quick. Expedition is a story about becoming an adult with a lack of direction, similar to something like Night in the Woods. In fact, the writing of this game heavily reminds me of Night in the Woods, which is definitely a game you should check out, just saying. Expedition, despite being a 1 hour long demo, has already immersed me in its story more than I would have expected. It's managed to make me feel the same emotions I felt playing Omori, but in a significantly faster time span. I want to know what's gonna happen. I need to see how the game continues, but for now we'll just have to wait. I feel like this is something that might just resonate with some people on a different level, but if you have the attention span of a fish or feel the desire to speed run through every game you play and skip through NPC dialogue, then this game is not for you, because 90% of it is just talking and getting to understand your character better. However, I personally really enjoy this kind of stuff, and I hope to see more of Expedition in the future. There isn't much gameplay so far, unfortunately, so the gameplay will have to get a 2 out of 10. Visuals 9 out of 10, enjoyment 9.5 out of 10, and as a story-based game, this gets an 8.5 out of 10. I recommend playing Expedition, and a song I chose to go with this game is Don't Give Up from Undertale. So, in conclusion, all of these underrated Roblox games have something unique to bring to the table. Even if I enjoyed some of them less than the others, I still think all of them are worth trying out, because you can tell a great amount of effort has been poured into each one of them. To the developers out there watching this, I hope you take my criticisms with a grain of salt. I hope you continue doing what you're doing, because although it may not seem like it, the fact that you're putting something out there without malicious intent to profit off of children makes your game that much more meaningful. And I hope you're proud of yourself. You made something unique, something fun, something actually worth playing. And to the viewers out there, go ahead and shed some light on these passion projects. They really deserve it. Make sure to give me more games in the comments, and I might just turn this into a yearly series. Only time will tell. Thank you for watching. This was extremely difficult to make, but I'm glad you made it all the way to the end. So let's end this video with the most underrated musical track I've heard from these games. Hit it!